We're joined by our senior advisor on international affairs and on national security, Rick Grenell, former acting director of DNI and ambassador to Germany. Rick, I want to start with, first of all, your comments or thoughts on this upcoming impeachment trial next week.
First of all, it's ridiculous. I mean, the whole idea of impeachment is to remove a president, and we have a new president. And so that's really moving into a political atmosphere. I mean, if this is how the Democrats are going to work to somehow embarrass the other side and punish later, then they're really weaponizing impeachment, and it's a misuse of it, which means in the future, people are going to use it as a political wedge now, and they just ruined the whole idea of what it really is supposed to be.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because if you can start going back and impeaching presidents, I mean, they could go back to the living presidents, at least Jimmy Carter, and maybe you don't stop there. Do they go back? Did they impeach George W. Bush? They tried to do that when he was in office. What about Bill Clinton? They tried to do that too. He was acquitted, but hey, there's no double jeopardy there. I mean, do they try that again? I mean, this is what's ridiculous about this whole approach. But I want to talk about the situation with a serious concern, and that is the infiltration by the Chinese national into Eric Swalwell's office. But I wanted to put it, Rick, in a broader context, and that is the context of the danger going forward with China. You are the director of national intelligence for our country. Let's talk about that. The significance of the threat from the Chinese.
It's a big threat. It's a crisis. Russia's a problem, but China's a crisis, and I say that often. We have to understand that politicians who are telling us to look over there at Russia are really giving the Beijing line. Beijing has been manipulating our politicians locally and at the state level and members of Congress. They've been doing it quietly. They've infiltrated our academic institutions. They've done it quietly. This is a crisis. And I just have to say, Jay, there's a lot of talk amongst Republicans how frustrated they are that the Durham report didn't come out, that we don't have action against people who commit crimes. When ACLJ decides to push forward on the Eric Swalwell situation, and the government is not, Congress is not, this is an actionable item that the people should get involved with. I hope that we get a lot of support for this FOIA request. This is the action that needs to take place to punish people when they do something wrong, when Washington ignores it.
Well, let me tell you this, Rick, and Jordan knows this too, and so does Stan. We are going to be expanding our offices in Washington with additional staffing and lawyers. This is our first lawsuit of the year. It is against the State Department. It may well be against your former office, the Office of Director of National Intelligence, the NSA, and the FBI. We did make the formal request for documents, as you're supposed to do. Of course, no response or a non-satisfactory response. So we are going to go into U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia and do what we do best, and that's go to court to get this information because, first of all, Eric Swalwell is an impeachment manager of all things, which is so ironic. Number two, it's not just Eric Swalwell here. We want to know what the government knew about this, Jordan, and how they were dealing with it or not dealing with it.
That's right. Why did it take so long for them to get briefed? And remember how bold Nancy Pelosi was initially before she got that special briefing with House GOP leader McCarthy. And she was bold. She was sticking with Swalwell. And listen, they kept him on the Homeland Security Committee. They made him a House impeachment manager, which to me makes him as partisan as makes the impeachment just that much more partisan. Him and Ted Lieu being on that team makes it so extra partisan, if you will. But after that briefing by the FBI, Nancy Pelosi had no comment. And Kevin McCarthy said it was very scary what they heard. And yet the Democrats continued to place Swalwell in these positions of power while he'll receive classified briefings and be a House impeachment manager when they're trying to convince Republicans, which to me tells me they were never trying to actually convince Republicans. They just want to damage and tarnish President Trump.
So on December 16th, Rick, we sent a FOIA request to the FBI, the State Department, the Office of Director of National Intelligence, and the NSA. That's the initial start process. we received a response from each agency, but each of the responses are so deficient that they entitle us to file a lawsuit to seek court intervention. To summarize the request, I want people to understand what we're asking for. We're seeking records pertaining to the FBI's knowledge and efforts surrounding the breaking story that the Chinese spy known as Christine Fang, or Fang Fang, had a lengthy relationship with Representative Eric Swalwell, including placing staff inside his office. And evidently evidently became a known Chinese spy. And this goes back to, Rick, the Chinese situation. Putting Eric Swalwell's lack of judgment to one side here. Let's talk about, you said, a problem is Russia, a threat is China. What are we looking at here?
Look, I think people are really frustrated with no consequences. And this Eric Swalwell situation, while he maintains access to classified information on a very key committee and is getting promoted, as you pointed out, as an impeachment manager, he's being used for higher tasks. This means that Washington and the leaders of the intel community are completely ignoring what this problem is when a Chinese spy infiltrates an individual member of Congress. I'm tired of having no consequences. I'm proud that ACLJ is taking up the mantle to say, we will get to the bottom of it. We need your help in making sure that we can follow through. But people want there to be consequences for actions. Eric Swalwell right now is getting away with it, and we can't let him get promoted by Nancy Pelosi simply because they all live in the San Francisco Bay Area and they politically know each other.
I want to go to Than Bennett, our Director of Governmental Affairs, here for a moment, too. And Than, as you know, Ben Sisney, a senior counsel for the ACLJ, is our FOIA expert. He's working on this situation right now, and I want to get your sense, Than, on we got pretty much stymied from the government here.
Yeah, there's a couple of layers here, Jay. I mean, the FOIA lawsuit is going to focus on what the executive branch knew, the FBI, the State Department, ODNI, NSA, and others, Jay. But look, there's an awful lot we already know about the legislative branch, and I want to make sure that's not lost on our listeners because this information was withheld from the House Intelligence Committee for 5 years by Congressman Swalwell, while Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff continued to give him cover and put him on that committee. And look, yeah, I'm not naive to this. There's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of debate that happens on a partisan level in Washington, D.C., and a lot of that is appropriate, Jay. It rubs the rough edges off of ideas. But on the House Intelligence Committee, it is of paramount importance that there is trust between its members because of the sensitive nature that they deal with. So for the other members on that committee, both Republican and Democrat, to have this information withheld for them for 5 years is an abdication of duty. And remember, Jordan alluded to this, but Speaker Pelosi, before that briefing, she came out directly and said, all of the other members of the committee knew about this. There's nothing to see here. Well, Jay, the other members on the Republican side of the aisle came forward and said, no, we didn't know anything about this. Meanwhile, we were sitting next to Eric Swalwell getting this sensitive information, and he was taking it back to his personal office where there was someone from the Chinese government that was infiltrating his office. Jay, it's almost beyond belief.
Rick, really quickly, we're going to a break. It really is. I mean, it really is beyond belief here.
Look, what Nancy Pelosi is trying to be cute on is that we knew that some members of Congress were getting defensive briefings, but they didn't know the specifics. They knew the general rule, and that's why she keeps saying, we all knew. No, they knew that there were certain members that were caught up in this Chinese situation that would get defensive briefings, but they did not know who and what specifics about that situation.
And Rick Grenell was the former acting director of the Office of National Intelligence.